Hey gamers, we're back with another episode of Let's Create a Competitive Card Game. In this episode, I'll be expanding on the world lore as well as coming up with the game areas and card types. Let's get started. Okay, so last episode I came up with some world lore, or rather a synopsis of the world itself. And what I want to do today is expand on these guilds within the world, as I believe expanding on this will help with coming up with some card types as well as some card effects. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll call this guild structure. And first, how many guilds are there in the game and what exactly is a guild? So I recall when I was coming up with the game concept, I mentioned how Magic and other games use colors. And for instance, in Magic, there's 5 colors. And I mentioned how I like that, but in my game, I'd want fewer colors, and they don't necessarily need to be colors. So, what guilds are in this game is they are essentially, you can say, colors in other games. So within this game, there is 3 guilds, and we can say the majority of the world, as I believe I stated up here, belongs to one of the guilds. So with that said, what is the actual structure of a guild? So at the very top of a guild, there is a guild head. So each guild has one guild head, and below the head, I'll say there are some, I'll say guild elders, and we'll say each guild has between 4 to 7 elders, and let's not say specifically elders, let's just say elders slash leaders, as you don't have to be old to be one of the main leaders within a guild. Now, with under these elders or leaders, I'll say there are some guild captains. And the way it works is each guild elder slash leader has their own captains that answer to them. And I'll say there is no restriction on the number of captains. Now, underneath these captains is, we'll just say everyone else. We'll just call them guild regulars. And there is no limit. Just for the sake of formatting, I'll go ahead and put these slashes in here. So, how then does a player fight to put themselves in control of their guild? And what is the player's position within their guild? So within this game, we'll say that the player is a guild captain. So they fall under one of the elders within the guild. Now, the way a player can gain control of a guild, let's say theoretically, is each guild captain has an infinite number of regulars who follow them. So the head is really in charge of the guild, but to do anything that would drastically affect the guild, the head has to consult with the elders or leaders and get their permission. Now, the captains take orders from the elders or leaders, and with those orders, they kind of hand them out to the regulars. So, in order for a captain to become a guild head, the captain can challenge their elder directly in order to become an elder, and to do that they can amass either enough guild regulars, or they can take over some of the other captains within their their elders' ranks. And from there, if they become an elder, any guild elder or leader can challenge a guild head. So that is the kind of the chain of becoming a head within this world itself. So this is enough to get started on the game areas and with some card types. So I'll go ahead and make a new page. And actually, instead of creating a page for game area and card types, I'll go ahead and just make a rules, or rather rule book. And this will be the first draft or pre-draft of the actual rule book for the game. So as this is a rule book, I'll go ahead and put how to win in here, because that is the most important thing in a card game or game in general. Sorry, I'm talking and typing what I'm saying. So how to win. And I did mention that I wanted more than 2 win conditions within this game, and I have come up with those conditions. So let's just say you win the game if, and the first one will be the standard one. Let's say your opponent's life is reduced to 0. And the next one that I've kind of been thinking about is kind of the opposite of this one. And it is if your life reaches some arbitrary number. And we'll say that number is X for now, as I don't have a concrete number. And so a lot of games, or the majority of games out there, you win the game if you reduce your opponent's life to 0. And a lot of games have cards and card types and effects which focus on increasing your life, but the only role that plays is that your life stays higher than your opponent's so that you don't hit 0 first. So I think it would be cool if there was a game that has some target amount of life to reach where you instantly reach, or you instantly win the game. So that's the idea behind if your life reaches some number. And the last one is, let's say, the obvious one of a card effect causes you to win. Alright, so this is how to win the game, and I'm going to go ahead and center that. So now we can get right into game areas. And I'll bold that and also center that. So now, I've mentioned that I want this game to be really easy for anyone who's played games like Magic, Force of Will, Yu-Gi-Oh!, The Spoils, any card game really. I want it to be really easy for them to pick up and learn how to play. And I think a big aspect of that is keeping the game areas named similar to how other card games name their areas. So with that said, the first area we'll say is the deck. Now what I'll do is I'll list these game areas, and then I'll put just some context on what that area is and what it entails right here. And I won't go too into details on the information here. I'll do that off camera. So here I'll just put some notes. So the deck is, we'll just say, combination of all of your cards. And let's say, what else is the deck, or what does the deck have? One thing we say is the deck remains face down and randomized at all times. Fate remains face down and randomized. And we will, oh wow, I butchered that. We can also say, whenever the deck is searched, it has to be shuffled. And speaking of shuffling, I've played games where players shuffle their deck after searching their deck, and they don't give the opponent an opportunity to shuffle or cut the deck. Or the opponent says that they don't want to cut or shuffle the other player's deck, and then the opponent might also say that the player is cheating because they didn't get a chance to shuffle or cut their deck, etc. So in this game, we'll say that whenever you shuffle your deck, your opponent may, or rather your opponent has to shuffle or cut your deck. So we'll say, how should I word this? I'll just say it that way. Your opponent, let's say, was shuffle or cut. Now, right after the deck, we can go ahead and say there's the hand. Now, the basic thing to say about the hand is when cards are drawn from your deck, they are put into your hand. So I'll just say, let's just say cards drawn from deck are placed in hand. Alright, what else? Hand. So one thing that comes to mind when talking about hands in games is hand size. So there's games that have hand limits, and if you reach that limit or pass that limit, you have to discard a card. So I'm not really a big fan of that. So for this game, I'll say there is no maximum hand size. So just for notes, I'll say no maximum size. And I know in games there are effects and cards that have something happen when they are discarded from your hand, but those can happen via other card effects rather than a game mechanic forcing them to happen. And we can also say keep your hand hidden. And also you must reveal your hand size, or you must tell your opponent your hand size if they ask. So how about if an opponent asks your hand size. And again, I'm going to go through after the video and flesh some of this out, make it more complete sentences. So the next part is, let's say, discard pile. As you can see, I'm keeping these very simple naming, nothing like the magic area or the force or some weird name, and keeping it very simple. And we'll say the discard pile is, one thing we could say is that each player has their own. And we can say that when a card is discarded or destroyed, it is sent to the top of this pile. So when a card is destroyed or discarded, it is sent face up to this pile. And we can also say that the discard pile is ordered. So cards in this area remain in the order in which they are sent. So for short, I'll say this area is ordered. The cards in this area are ordered. And we'll also say that any player can look at any discard pile at any time, but they may not change the order of the cards. Change the card. And as a side note, I'll put that you have to ask your opponent before touching their cards. I mean, that is kind of an unwritten rule, but I'm gonna make it a written rule. So now the next area I'll say is let's say in play. And the in play area is one of the areas that for each game it kind of has its own unique name. So this is one of the areas where I can get creative and change the naming. But for now I'll just say the in play area. So I can say main play area. What else can I say? All cards are put here when they've successfully been played. So successfully played cards are put here. So just UCC successfully. So successfully played cards are put here. And I should note what a successfully played card is. So I can say this means or I'll just note here if an opponent has not prevented the card from being played. So yeah, there we go. And the next area will be the last game area. We'll say remove from play. Remove from play. And again, this is another zone that can maybe have its own unique naming, but for now I'm going to keep it simple. And we'll say when a card is removed from play, it is put in this area. And I'll have a keyword for remove from play. So I'll just say when a card is, and I'll bold keyword, so I know to replace this with the keyword. We'll say it is sent here. Now, I know in some games players have their own remove from play area, but we'll say for this game, this is a single area. But players can have their own piles. Players may keep separate piles for their cards. Separate piles, let's say for their cards. And what else do I want to say about the remove from play area? Probably the standard, any player can look at but must not change. Actually, how about this? I'll just copy this for now. I'm going to change this up to save on some typing. I'll say any player can look at this area. Any player can look at this area, but must ask opponents before touching their cards. There we go. Alright, and this will be all for the game areas. So now I'm going to do some card types. And I'll probably only do a couple card types as I do want to keep this video fairly short. So the next video we might have to pick up on card types. So what are the card types for this game? So the main card type for this game will be, let's say, you the player. What I mean by that is, think of the spoils where you have your faction that gives you your life as well as some other special effects, or like your J ruler in Force of Will. So in this game we'll have, I don't want to say captain, let's say class card. And for this card, we can say this card represents you and your guild in the world. And also, we'll say that this is not part of your deck. So, I don't have to say this. Let's say it's not part of deck or deck limit. Speaking of which, I need to figure out what the deck limit is. And may only use one. And so the class card will essentially be one of the captains in the guild. So as there's no restriction to the number of captains, this class card can be pretty much anything. So what else can I say about the class card? Any damage, when the card inflicts damage to you, it is inflicted to the class card, as this class card will have your life. So this is essentially you in your life. And the same thing, we can say that anything that increases your life increases this card's life. So let's say any increases in your life increase this card's life. So there, now we know this card will have some life on it. And we can also say when your class card reaches 0 life, you lose the game. And we can also say, or rather instead of reaches, when class card life is reduced to 0, you lose the game. And we can say when class card's life reaches X, you win the game. There we go. And you know what? Let's go ahead and list the parts of a class card. So for each card type, I'll list the parts right underneath the card type. And let's make a list. Let's tab this, and we'll say obviously it has a name. And we can say, here, let's not go with this. Let's say name, and the name being the name of the card. We can say it has a, maybe it has its guild on there. we'll say it has a guild on there. We'll say, we'll say type, and I'll put a question mark because maybe we don't need the type of card on there. But there are different ways to handle card types. You can put the card type on there where you can say like spell card, trap card, etc. Or you can do types by color coding cards, whereas all spell cards are green and all traps are red, so you don't necessarily have to put spell card on that card. So I'm not sure, so I'm going to put a question mark on here for now. I'll just say the type of card. And so this card will have your life on it. And something, let me see, we'll have some text on here. And text will just be any effect or flavor text the card has. So any effect or flavor text the card has. And something that I've been thinking about to make this game unique is having these cards have this thing called a wheel. And wheels are special effects that your class card has that only happens once at some threshold, and it auto activates, taking priority, which means in a, let's say if there is a quote unquote chain and some things happen, that once a wheel kicks off, the wheel happens before everything else. So your wheel takes precedence over everything else. So I'll just say this is a one-time auto activating effect. One-time auto activating effect, which may have requirements. And that's not to say that every single wheel will be auto activating. Maybe for rare cards, maybe you can activate your wheel at will. And I shouldn't say rare cards because I don't really want to have rarities within the game, but that is something which I'll discuss maybe in a later video. So what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll just paste it here, just so for other cards I can kind of copy it and paste it if I need it. And let's just call this, let's say card parts. And I'll go ahead and bold this and move it to the center. So now the next card type, and this will be the last one of the card types I do, and I'll pick up on the rest in the next video. So the next card type will be the character card of the game, or a creature card, whatever you want to call it. And since you are a captain, then these character cards will be the regulars, as the captains order the regulars around. So the regulars are the captains, let's say the followers of the captains, and actually I'm going to call it followers. That seems like a fair name. And we'll say that to explain the followers, we'll say followers are, let's say, people who fight for you. Let's say they're your subordinates. Subordinates who fight for you. Fight for you. And we can say that they can attack and defend. And let's say can attack and defend. What else can they do? And since we say can attack and defend, maybe I should mention something like summoning sickness. Because I don't want to have this game where cards can attack the turn they're put into play. Because if you have like a Weenie Rush deck, then you'll be able to deal an immense amount of damage fairly quick with some like Weenie Rushes. So I'll say that may only attack if it's been into play since the start of the turn. So that will be the quote-unquote summoning sickness. Next, let's say I don't know if there's really a reason to mention this, but let's just say attack is the damage they deal. So yeah, attack is the damage they deal. And we'll say defense represents the amount of damage they can take. And what else can we say about followers? We can say they are destroyed if the damage they receive in a turn is greater than or equal to their defense. So let's say are destroyed if they take damage in a turn, let's say greater than or equal to their defense. And yeah, so that will be this. And what I'll do for now is I'll go ahead and copy this, and we can edit this. So let's tab over, put that there, and we'll say the parts, let's say they have a name, they have a guild, what else? They should have a cost, and that should be the cost to play this card. And that will also, the cost system will be explained in another episode when I figure out the resource system of this game. So let's go ahead and put cost there. What else do these followers have? They have a cost. They have a type. Let's say they have some text. So they don't have a wheel, but they may have some game mechanic. And game mechanic will be any game mechanic associated with this card. That'll be how I explain that. So let's just say any game mechanic associated. Let's say any game mechanic associated with this card. Alright, they'll have some text. They won't have life, but they'll have attack or defense. And this is just the attack and defense of this card. And now this will be where I end this video. Actually, one more thing. How about they have a guild? So let's give them a status. And this might be a little confusing. This card's status in the world. So this may be a little bit confusing because usually, I mean, this is kind of interchangeable with type, but the way status will work in this game is status will be kind of like their, yeah, this is going to be confusing, their class. So a class card represents you, but the status will act like, are you a, let's say, a warrior? Are you a archer? Or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll also put some notes in here, and I'll say, let's say status is what this card is in the world, what this character is in the world, and I'll put i.e. warrior, you say warrior, mage, cleric, or I don't want to say cleric. Oh, why not? Let's say cleric, etc. And the way this will work is that each guild, so there's 3 guilds, and the guilds are, I mentioned, they're supposed to be similar to the colors and magic. So each guild will have something they specifically do. And so you can have your status within the guild, but the way this status will work is, let's say warriors aren't restricted to one guild. Every guild can have cards of every status, if that makes sense. I'll have to explain that in a future video. Yeah, I'll definitely have to explain that. And let's say that your status is crown gold. Alright, so this will be the end of this video. In the next video, I'll expand, or rather not expand, I'll add some more card types, and maybe I'll have something more concrete with respect to the 3 different guilds. Along the lines of what they are, what they do. As my idea for the guilds are that the guilds have specific play types. And so you can have a warrior with one play type or another play type. So that's kind of my idea behind guilds right now. So yeah, in the next video or episode of this, I'll go ahead and add some more card types and maybe expand some more on the guild structure and more of the lore behind this world. Alright guys, thanks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that other good stuff.